John ODowd. I'm the Sinn Féin education spokesperson.
And John, what's the biggest challenge in your view that's facing education in Northern Ireland at the moment?
The budget, without a doubt. The education budget has taken a massive hit. We're £300 million short at this stage of the budget process. So I think the challenge facing all the parties is to secure funding for the education service, so we have our frontline services are protected and we have an education service we can be proud of.
You say secure funding, you think there could be more money found rather than just a better use of the money we've got?
Well, I think it's a bit of both. Certainly all departments have a duty to ensure they use public resources efficiently, but considering that we're facing such a deficit in our overall budget, that there is a duty upon us to find other revenue sources. The Executive has identified £800 million already. There's potential there for several £100 million extra, I think. So I think that's the next phase of the work.
Well, I think lots of people would be happier to think there was more money. There was more money going into education, but given that the public sector is still going to have to work with restricted budgets, what do you think is the best way of spending and saving in the education system?
Well, I think certainly a greater sharing of resources, the better use of area-based planning, the better use of our existing school estate and sharing services between our school estate, I think, is a way forward. There's going to be hard decisions about school planning in the future, about where schools are located and how those schools share services. I think it's going to be a challenge to all the sectors within our education system. You've
said there are hard decisions to be made and hard questions to face. What's making them so hard?
Well, I think in the system we have, the sectors have grown up independent of each other and they have their own values and ethos, which is a good thing. And I think that can be protected, but it needs to be protected in a new mindset, that they're going to have to share services, they're going to have to share buildings, institutions together, and that in its own self brings opportunities and advantages to our education system. Now, there is examples across the north where that is happening. The budget and the lack of money in public services, I think, is going to be a driving force behind that again.
Do you not see that increased sharing would bring a new ethos, an ethos of multiculturalism, of sharing, of diversity and integration?
Well, multiculturalism and diversity and integration is something that Sinn Féin would support. However, we do operate in a system where there's parental choice, where parents make the decision where their pupils attend schools. There's a strong ethos through those schools. You have the Catholic sector, and indeed in terms of the controlled sector, there's an ethos runs through that sector as well. And I think in the future, we have to work our way as to where people feel their ethos is protected. But certainly, I don't see that being diminished through the greater use of shared services or indeed the greater use of shared schools.
There have been questions raised as to whether a single faith school should receive public funding. Do you see it as reasonable that perhaps putting public money into a school should be dependent on it being welcoming to pupils from all faiths and none?
Well, I think we are in the situation where we are. The history of this island cannot be ignored. The history of our education system cannot be ignored. There is clearly a large section of our society who want to send their children to Catholic faith schools. That is part of the parental choice ethos, and I think those people are taxpayers. Those people contribute to the public well-being, and certainly their education system should be funded. That does not mean, however, that sector is not open to challenges and challenging itself around how it integrates with the rest of the sectors around it. But parents make the choices, and many parents have decided that they want to send their children to single faith schools.
But you've talked about historical reasons for the system. What about looking to the future? How big a part do you think integration and sharing can play in building a more cohesive and peaceful society?
It plays a central part to it. We, in this current generation of politicians, have developed a new mindset and a new way of working in terms of politics. I would like to see that flow down into our society and into our communities. And we should be the drivers of change. And clearly there's challenges, as I've said, to the education sectors, whether they be faith-based, the controlled sector, or even indeed the integrated sector, as to how it sees itself and sees its role in the future. Integration across our society is key to a successful future. We have to take it, however, at a pace which makes people comfortable.
We're approaching the Assembly and the Council elections. How important is it to your party that a majority of people, according to opinion polls, would like to see more integrated schools here?
Well, we have been to the forefront in supporting integrated education. It was the previous Education Minister, Martin McGuinness, who lowered the threshold and actually gave a boost to integrated education. and we will support the development of integrated schools and integrated education services. This, however, all flows down to parental choice. Parents make the decisions as to where they want to send their children, and it's also worth remembering too, part of that decision is sending their children to their local school. And unfortunately, we live in a divided society, and in many instances, the local school is a single identity community area. That is the reality of the situation. We as politicians have a duty to break down those barriers across community and across society, and indeed we have a duty to break those down in education as well. But parents will send their children, by and large, especially in primary school circumstances, to their local school.
And in terms of your own experience of school, what's your strongest memory from your school days?
Well, I was thinking about this, and my strongest memory is probably my primary school. And my primary school headmaster, Mr. McBreen, who was a larger-than-life figure when you look back in your school years. So I think sitting in a porter cabin in Bond Primary School in Primary 7, thinking that you were on top of the world because you were in the porter cabin, was my fondest memories of school.
Overall happy memories?
I think I did have a good schooling. I had a small rural primary school I attended, and then I moved up, which was a big experience, into a large comprehensive school. That was very daunting at the time. But looking back on my school years, I think I had a good schooling.
Thank you very much.